I'm Councilman Kevin Kramer. This is the Budget Committee. This is Thursday afternoon. It's 4:31. I'm joined in chambers by Vice Chair Marcus Winkler and also joined by Councilwoman Marilyn Parker, Councilman Piagentini, Councilman Reno Weber, Councilman Hudson, and Councilwoman Mulvaney Woolridge, as well as Councilman Lindinger, joined online by Councilman Owen, Councilwoman Paula McCraney, and Councilwoman Shamika Parrish-Wright. Did I miss anybody? Great. Madam Clerk, if you please read into the record the statement about virtual meetings.
This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A, read in full.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is an item for discussion. Homeless Services Division is here to present their quarterly report. So Josh Swetnam, Patricia Williams, and John Pilbeam, if you will introduce yourselves, I'll throw the floor. I'm assuming I'm throwing it first to Patricia. Great. If you'll introduce yourself and go ahead and get us going. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Williams, Director, Office of Social Services, formerly known as Office for Resilience and Community Services. So hopefully social services is a lot easier for you all to remember and provide some clarity. So I just want to start by reminding us of why we started Homeless Initiative Funds. These funds are prioritizing keeping our unhoused neighbors safe, preventing them from dying on the street, reducing jail stays, and connecting neighbors to shelter. We provided some reports for you all that will be shown on the screen that cover the impact and results that we've seen over the first half of fiscal year 2025. So these dates will cover July 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. So just looking at the budget, we wanted to just remind you of the breakdown of how these funds have been allocated and broken out. So in this first illustration, you will see there were $2,517,800 dedicated to HSD operations, as well as the Homeless Initiative Funds for Partners. So Homeless Initiative Funds for Partners, that breakout was $1,207,000. In the second illustration at the bottom, you will see how those priorities were spread out across the partners. So we were looking at inclement weather, overnight shelter, and case management as those three core areas where we wanted to add additional capacity in our community for the unhoused citizens. The next chart, we will see at the top, it identifies the external agency fund partners, which includes non-homeless grants as well, which is other supplemental services that are important but don't necessarily specifically relate to the homeless population. But there was $1,809,300 allocated through external agency funds partnerships. And at the bottom, our HUD funds, Housing and Urban Development Funds, those go to support about 300 families through our housing and support team with rental assistance. So that allocation was $4,519,358. So we're going to get more into detail around these priorities. I want to remind you that with the Homeless Initiative Funds, we issued a competitive grant process where 7 agencies were selected that are in the community delivering these services to the community. So next, I'm going to pass it to Director Swetnam.
Thank you, Director Williams. My name is Josh Swetnam, Co-Director, Office of Social Services. And as Director Williams said, just want to give you some more detailed information about our Homeless Initiative Funds as a significant portion of our overall Homeless Services Division budget. You can see that it's approximately $1.2 million for FY25. That was a competitive process. We were initially partnering with 7 agencies. You can see the list there. on the screen. There are also 2 additional agencies that were included in our homeless initiative funds. Our partnership with YMCA Safe Place evolved to meet needs of young adults a little bit later in the fiscal year. Also, the Rave Alert system was covered under this initiative for half of this year, and then we are going to be actually have already started our own Rave Alert system to be sponsored by Louisville Metro, and so that will be fully operational very soon, while the Coalition for the Homeless is still also operating a Rave Alert system to notify bed availability on a daily basis. So of those 9 agencies, it makes up $1.2 million in homeless initiative funds. There were 3 priority areas, and these priority areas reflect important components of our homeless services. Obviously, we have our homeless services team out there serving the unhoused every day. We also have many, many partners that we work with and that we help fund. But the homeless initiative funds are a way to target in on 3 specific areas so that we can provide additional support, help folks move along the path to housing quicker, and also just make sure that our neighbors are safe during inclement weather. So you can see that one priority is providing more funding and support to overnight shelters, those facilities where our unhoused neighbors can get off the street in a safe and warm environment. The second priority is case management. We know from experience and much of our data collection that funding is important, but also service delivery is crucial, and particularly intensive case management for our unhoused neighbors. And so in this fiscal year, we wanted to prioritize case management with our homeless initiative funds to agencies that would be able to walk alongside our homeless neighbors, be able to provide intensive case management to help them break down barriers to housing, get essential services, and again, make quicker progress on that pathway to housing. And then finally, we had the inclement weather services. As I'm sure you know, we have our shelters within the city of Louisville. We also have White Flag, which is a period when there's inclement weather, either extreme heat or extreme cold, where shelters will loosen up their typical restrictions and let people in. But even with that, we have found that it's important to have additional options during inclement weather so that everyone is housed and that we're able to reach every population, including families. And so we partnered with St. John Center, Volunteers of America, Southwest Family Ministries, and YMCA Safe Place, or YMCA of Greater Louisville, to provide inclement weather services. And those were typically either shelter or hotel stays when the weather was extreme. And then they also received case management services while housed through that program. A few of our outcomes with the Homeless Initiative Funds, just within this program, 863 unique clients were served, and 1,639 services were provided to those individuals. As a result of the services delivered under Homeless Initiative Funds, 636 accepted shelter, and 72 became housed. We also, as Director Williams mentioned, one of our priorities, in addition to keeping our neighbors safe, alive during the coldest days, we also want to prevent recidivism. So 89% of participants did not see a booking with LMDC during this time period from July to December. And during that same time period, we had no deaths on the street from exposure. And then just finally, I'll mention specifically about inclement weather. If you tally up the extreme heat, extreme cold, and snow days, that's 55 days where we had extreme weather, either heat or cold. And during those days, we served 467 individuals through inclement weather services. So I'm going to turn it to Director Pilbeam to tell you more about home services.
Good afternoon. John Pilbeam, Director of Homeless Services. Sorry. So I'm going to talk about our encampment reports. So we had 101,102 311 reports from 7/1/24 to 6/30/2025. Of those, 632 were confirmed camps. 113 were scheduled for cleaning. There were 360 referrals to codes and regs. That was probably most likely because they were on private property. There were 97 reports on encampments on KYTC property, 36 on Metro Parks, and then outreach only, there were 78. The size of camps, you can see that it was largely 1 to 3 individuals. Their average day to assess was 1. Camps on abandoned property were 81. Camps by assessed risk level, you can see most were low, followed by medium, and then of course high. Camps with a high risk score were 34. High risk score the previous year is down 75% this past year. We have a top 10 areas in those camps in high area of concern. We had 92, and that's down 89% over the past year. Our street outreach, we spoke to 1,086 unique clients. Of that, we had 2,100 contacts. The request source through 311, we had 54%. The outreach team went out on their own and talked to 46% of folks. Other services provided, you can see that it's IDs and documents, 39%. They transported 37% of those individuals to a shelter. They connected 33% to a shelter. Housing case management, 23%. Connect with clinical care, 9%. Clients referred to the men's day shelters, 403. Women's day shelter, 147. Common assessment, 256. You'll see so on. Attempts needed to engage clients. We're really proud that 84% of folks talked to us on our first attempt. We're getting better at it. Our outreach team is getting better, and that 84% makes me really proud of the work they're doing. HMIS services received after outreach. 61% of those individuals went to supportive services. 28% went to housing and referral assessments. 28% went to shelter programs. Unfortunately, 27% were not served elsewhere, and then 5% went into housing. So very proud of our team. I think they're doing great work, and I think that is it for our report. So if I'd like to open it up for questions if you have any.
Councilman Hudson?
Thank you, Chair. I think this question is addressed to Mr. Swetnam, but I'll allow anybody to answer it, I guess. I would turn your attention to page 3 of your presentation, and specifically the table at the upper half of that page. Do I understand this correctly? And I'll just take the two extremes here. Southwest Family Ministries, with $50,000, served 306 clients, and Up for Women and Children, with $100,000, served 2 clients. Do I understand that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And be happy to.
So is anybody paying attention to the effectiveness of the dollars that are being granted?
Absolutely. Sure. So this is Aaron Moss, our data analyst.
I just wanted to point out on that particular grant, the Up for Women and Children, the case management was contingent upon them hiring a case manager, and they unfortunately had some setbacks with that. They were able to hire one starting in last quarter. Going forward, they do intend to provide more services.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part of what you said. They hired a case manager?
Yes, the Up for Women and Children that only had 2 clients served, they were able to hire a case manager that they're paying with those funds at the end of this reporting period.
Okay, so it's a timing issue.
Yes.
Okay.
And Councilman Hudson, it's also a service issue, or I guess more specifically a service category. Up for Women and Children, for the first time, was part of the Homeless Initiative funds to provide case management services. And as Aaron Moss said, they did have some struggle hiring or contracting with people who could provide that service. And so we are monitoring the funds very closely, and we actually have a meeting coming up with them to discuss why the funds haven't been spent, and also see if we can provide some assistance. But those funds will be directed to other services where we think will be more utilized if their spend rate is low. So it's a reimbursement basis, so they have not received the funds yet, but we will direct the funds to other services within the agency if the case management is not being effective. And I'll also just point out that with Southwest Community Ministries providing inclement weather shelter, they have done an amazing job with a lower amount of funding, providing a very vital service, and a lot of that is just essential services, transporting to and from shelter, providing emergency shelter during inclement weather, providing basic needs for people on the street. And so we know the need is high, and they were able to meet that need very quickly and efficiently. And we're still working with them to kind of build their program.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And I'm not known for my diplomacy most of the time, so I'm just going to put out there what I'm hearing is, quote, this is just another example of the South End getting the shaft. Where you have a Southwest Family Ministries at an average of $163 per client. The next one in line there is Wayside at $726, almost, what's that, 3 times more. And the rest of them are in the $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 per client.
Hello, so just to respond, I wanted to just make sure to point out that the difference in service, right? So inclement weather is what we funded Southwest Family Ministries for, and we had quite a few weather events, and they did do an excellent job, as my colleague stated. With the partners that we selected to do case management, most of them asked for budget to bring in additional staff. I will also say that in terms of turnaround for them to actually complete the agreement process and to submit their budget, they didn't really get funding in hand till late October, early November. So we're really talking about a month.
I'll cede my entire position on the case management
Okay.
because it's a timing issue.
Okay,
But the inclement weather, you've got 4 service providers here for inclement weather. And number of people served, 10, 53, 49, 306, if I'm reading that right. And and the services provided are in the same proportion. And I'm not trying to pick a fight here. I'm just saying a very small $50,000 given to the most effective person or most effective organization on the list seems, I'm just asking that as we go forward, let's pay attention to effectiveness of what the dollars are buying.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair.
If you introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Nicole George, Deputy Mayor, Public Health, Public Services. Yes, sir, to both things. First of all, the very last thing we would want is for any area of Metro to be getting the shaft. And we work very hard to make sure that all of our service providers are developing capacity and that we're reaching everyone across the community. We very much value the work of Southwest Ministries. And we also are very concerned about outcomes. The council has been a good partner in asking us to produce not just outputs, as in how many people have been served, but real outcomes, and that's what we attempted to demonstrate today in partnership with IQS and, of course, with Aaron Moss's support. I would just encourage everyone, when we look at the services, to understand that all services aren't created equal, meaning Southwest Ministries is providing a vital service. Their service cost is lower because they're providing day shelter in some instances. So they're able to, by nature of inclement weather, serve a lot of people coming in who are in freezing temperatures that just need basic services very quickly, versus some of our inclement weather involves more hotel stays and case management. So if you look at, for instance, YMCA Safe Place, they're providing hotel stays for that 18 to 25-year-old population that is less appropriate for, say, an emergency shelter down at Wayside, for instance. So that cost is going to be higher, and you're going to see fewer services. It's not as reflective of effectiveness, just a different type of service. And I think moving forward, we could do a better job outlining what types of services those are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
JP, I'm coming your way next, but I had exactly the same question, and I'm just going to follow it right now with I'm going to seek clarification, right? You have those 4 things listed the same way. It just says inclement weather. I'm a big fan of St. John's Day Center. I think they do great work. It's distressing when I see that St. John's, we spent $277,000 there and served 49 people with 53 services when compared to Southwest at 50,000. I have to believe, and I'm asking it as a question, I hear you saying different services, but I have to believe that there's more to this than just inclement weather shelter. St. John's didn't just open their doors in inclement weather and take in people that they don't normally, because St. John's takes in people all the time. This has to, and I don't know who to ask the question, but I'm asking if somebody can drill down here and help us understand the difference. Like what, and don't just call it inclement weather. St. John's did something very different than what Southwest did. They had to have. Well, I shouldn't say they had to have. I could accept, Councilman Hudson's point, but I just find that hard to believe. I've got tons of respect for St. John's and the work they do. I can't believe that they simply opened their doors and let people come in, and that's all they did. And Southwest did exactly the same thing for, what's that, 3-4 times as many people, 6 times? Yeah, there has to be more. So is there somebody that can speak to specifically to these services? Like speak specifically to St. John's. Speak specifically to, what Southwest, and again, not slamming what Southwest provided. I'm opening the doors is important. Heck, if all they do is let them sleep on the floor when it's a white flag night, that's awesome. It's important. But that shouldn't be compared to what another agency did if they offered all kinds of other services at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So can somebody speak to those?
Yes, and
Thanks.
I think you're elevating the exact issue that I think Councilman Hudson raised, and that I think we recognize, which is we have lumped these together because we essentially think of them in these buckets, but they are very different services. And an example of that was what I said with YMCA Safe Place. They're providing young people 18 to 25 hotel stays with case management. So their cost for service is going to look, it is more, and it is also, they're going to serve fewer people. Also, I would remind everyone with this report, we have until the end of the fiscal year to expend these funds. So what you're looking at is the award that was given, not what they have actually been reimbursed for. And so I think that's another important distinction. And I would also say, I think that the third piece to this is that really important to note that, again, we are working with our providers to enhance data collection. And so whether we're talking about our staff, because that's also a work in progress, or whether we're talking about our provider community, making sure that we're getting good data, and that's part of the value of this report in the first place, is making sure that we're capturing all of those quantifiables. I don't know that I can speak to specifically what St. John's was tasked with doing as part of it, but what we can do as a follow-up is share with you the very specific services that each provider said they would do as part of their award.
Would you like me to speak to St. John?
Yes.
Councilman Kramer, just specifically to your question about St. John, as Deputy Mayor George said, with YMCA providing hotel stays and case management, St. John was doing something that's outside of their normal scope of work. They do provide essential services through their day shelter, and they do a really wonderful job. As part of Homeless Initiative funds, they're actually taking their team and going out into the community and pulling people off the street into hotels. So one expense that's much higher than, say, a day shelter is just the cost of the hotel itself. The hotels may give us a little bit of a discount, but typically not much. So most of that goes to the actual cost of the hotel stays. They also have more than one, in most cases, more than one staff member case managing a household which includes trips to the grocery, trips to get IDs, trips to job interviews, looking at housing. So there is a, as my colleagues have said, there's a higher level of cost just because of the staffing and what those staff are doing as far as providing a higher level of service versus just a day shelter where someone can come in out of the elements. And so we certainly are striving to serve more people. I mean, that's our goal, is to really, we want to see a city without homelessness. So we're always looking to increase numbers. But as far as St. John specifically, there was a high degree of service and a high degree of cost with them because of the hotel stays.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll watch for Councilman Hudson to get back in here. I misspoke. I said that Councilman Lininger was next in the queue. It's actually the Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, Marcus Winkler. So, Councilman Winkler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Deputy Mayor, I think you touched on this a little bit. I think it might be helpful in this report just in the future, because I think this also potentially addresses the up question of not just listing the grant amount, but maybe what's been expended to date, right? So if they're hiring somebody and yes, they're awarded $100,000, but through the first half, they haven't expended any of it, or a tiny sliver, then you'd see two people and you'd say, okay, they just haven't really started yet, versus, when you look at this as it comes across, it's, they've spent $100,000 on two people. So just a thought, and I know there's some timing of when they invoice, but it'd be helpful to see how much has been expended to date, maybe just to provide a little bit more fidelity to this information. I've got three questions that I want to ask, and I don't know one of them I know who to direct to, and let me just start with this. I know one of the slides talked about the federal housing and urban development funds. Can somebody speak to, have we seen any impact on the federal cuts on the flow of federal funds, or, are we concerned about the potential impacts there?
No, not at this point. We received the initial memo when there was the pause for a couple of days, but since then, we are continuing the normal flow of business and just really working hard to ensure that we are meeting all the deadlines in terms of drawdowns, because that also works in a similar way that Deputy Mayor George mentioned earlier. It's a reimbursement setup, but no delays at this time.
Okay. Thank you. When we look at, I'll ask this sort of one broad question and whoever can answer. One of the challenges that I think many of us see is over the past, 3 or 4 years, we've put more and more money into homeless services, yet we see more street homeless visible. We had a similar experience with our homicide rate, right? We put more and more money into our anti-violence efforts, yet our homicide rate continued to go up. Last year, we finally saw it stabilize, and, we're very happy, and knock on wood, that we've seen a significant reduction this year. I'm wondering if it's your experience, or you think that we'll see something similar on the homeless front. I know we have very short-term memories. We made lots of investments in for example, building the community care campus, but that's still not online, right? Sheehan Landing is just now coming online, and so there's sort of a long tail between the funding allocation and actually seeing the impacts. And one of the challenges that lawmakers can have is that, or policymakers can have, is that, you change course because you haven't seen the results, but you just haven't given enough time. So sort of with that context, can you talk about the current state of our homeless outreach efforts, our affordable housing efforts, and when are you starting to see sort of the green shoots of that curve? And should we expect to, plow full speed ahead, and next year or the year after, you're going to start to see a significant reduction in the street homeless population?
Yes, sir. Thank you. A couple things I would say to this. First of all, again, upon the encouragement of council, we have really tried to be as intentional as possible when we talk about spending of dollars, particularly with our nonprofit partners, of how we're looking at outcomes. And what we can say is the investment of our homeless initiative funds meant we were able to keep people safe, meaning ensuring that people are not freezing to death on the streets, that we're increasing shelter stays, and that we are keeping people, there's less recidivism, keeping people out of jail, right? So we know that those are just 3 of the measures needed, of many measures. The ultimate goal is to see people obviously housed, but in the current environment and with the resources that we have, those are 3 outcomes that are really important. Next, if you will indulge me for just a moment, I really want to brag on our Homeless Services Division and John Pilbeam's team, because I think when you look at the encampment report, you will see that there is an impact in decrease of visible folks on the street. You can see that in the way of decrease in encampment risk scores. You can see that in terms of the decrease from year to year in concerns. The high concern areas are those areas where people continue to go back to block the right-of-way, essentially an open-air drug market, right? So when you see that there's a 98% decrease, when you see that there's, and again, this is just one measure, and so I don't want to pretend like this is the high measure for all success. So to make sure I'm being really clear about that, I don't believe that fewer reports to 311 indicate we've hit, the full success mark. What I do know is it is one measure of success, and that indicates less visible need, and it indicates the work of John's team in the way of outreach, first and foremost, and mitigation of risk due to encampments.
Yeah, and so, thank you. And so, thinking about the strategy holistically, with the permanent supportive housing coming online, I mean, it sounds like you believe we're moving in the right direction. And would you advocate for continued funding at this level, higher level, or we're going to start to see greater returns on investment, like sort of a force multiplier in the near term as all of these things start to come online?
So to answer your question, I look forward to working with council, and I know the mayor looks forward to working with council to produce a budget that does the very best we can and secures the most funding with what we have available. So I would say it's probably premature to make a budget request just yet. What I can assure you is that we are making the best use with the funding that we were given last budget, and that we're producing outcomes, measurable outcomes that we can see, both visibility in the streets, number of contacts and outreach, people making it to shelter, and again, in outcomes like prevention of death on the streets and people being in jail.
Councilman Lininger?
Thank you. I have a line of questions for Director Pilbeam, please. I would like to start with on page 4 in the confirmed camps report by assessment chart. There's the other category with an unreferenced asterisk. Can you describe the other category, please?
So the other is probably just, there we go. Yep. So, I didn't make it. All right, so it includes land bank areas, waterfront, Louisville Metro Housing Authority property, utility company properties.
Okay, so we have 632 confirmed camps. We removed from the unique reports the duplicate reports, the outreach only, there was not a camp, and the report not valid. And then we have 360 that were codes and regs referrals because those are on private property. We have KYTC property, 97, Metro Parks referral, 36, and then 26, the referrals that, as you mentioned, are just, it doesn't apply. So we have now left 113 camps for assessment and 113 camps cleared or scheduled for clearing. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And so, although we have only 34 camps with a high risk score and only 92 in areas of high concern, which is a reduction, it's still, regardless of whatever scoring they got, they were cleared. Correct?
They were ranked according to, yes.
Okay, so the assessment does not matter to what is going to be because I'm asking this because when we met at the orientation that Councilwoman Mulvey-Woolridge and I attended for new members of the Metro Council, I asked a question. I haven't received a response yet. Based on the flow chart, we assess whether or not this is public land, and it is the purview of the Homeless Services Division about these camps, and then we have an assessment on whether or not there is a need for clearing, and I still have not received any information on how many times at that step of that flow chart did we say there's a camp here, it's on public land, but you know what? We're not worried. So far in these 2 quarters, the answer has been 0. I'd still like to know what the percentage is for other periods.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
So I don't know that I can give you a percentage, and I think that would be something that we would need to go back and look at. But what I can say is the risk assessment essentially sets priority, right? So each month, the camps that score the highest obviously are the ones that we ensure we're touching, reaching, and have a plan for in the way of relocation.
Okay, so that's a little different from the flow chart format that we got at orientation, but that's fine. That's, it's an answer. So I also want to say that the emphasis on, visibility of, as a reason for clearing camps, that's worrisome to me frankly, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint. We spend a lot of money on clearing camps. If we're doing it purely for an aesthetic point of view and not as a measure of providing services and, tackling the problem, if we are chasing symptoms rather than addressing the issue, to me, that's a real problem. Fiscally, we have a limited pool of dollars here for the city of Louisville. We are constrained by the state on how we raise revenues, so we have to be very conscious of how we are spending our money. I definitely have questions about whether or not chasing visible signs of homelessness rather than addressing the issue and the root causes is the best use of that money. So, thank you.
So I think this would be a really good opportunity for me to remind everyone that when we look at relocations, we base that on decisions based on risk that comes from a standardized score. And so we're not talking about visibility as in we don't like how something looks aesthetically. We're talking about impacts as in restricted access to the right-of-way. We're talking about conditions that are unsafe that block collective health and safety for not just those living in an encampment, but those surrounding an encampment, those who have to walk to the bus stop, those who have to get to want to use the pavilion in the park. We're talking about that level, and again, the tool is is the measure in which, and the mechanism in which we prioritize and make decisions.
If I could add, as I understand, it's not a decision ever that a camp is okay, we're just going to leave a camp in place. The question isn't, is this camp going to be left forever? The question is, how quickly do we need to act on behalf of the safety of the people who are in the camp, and then the impact of the camp on the greater community around it. And so, and I think, as I've been trying to follow the conversation, questions about visibility, I didn't hear that we were making decisions about camps based on their visibility. What I heard is that when camps are more visible, we get more calls. I mean, people see it, they call us. Whether a camp is visible or not isn't the reason to move it. We might know about it because of that, but when we know a camp exists, we go into this mode right away of deciding what services need to be provided for the folks who are in this camp, and how quickly do we need to move on I don't want to say closing the camp, but cleaning the camp up and moving them somewhere else. Am I interpreting your message correctly?
Yes.
Okay, just make sure we're all on the same page. Great, thank you. Councilman Reno Weber, you're next in the queue.
Thank you so much. And I really do appreciate in this some of the data around the services that people are connected to and our efforts in that direction. I would be completely off-brand if I did not invite somebody to speak to our ability to bill Medicaid for some of these housing, case management, connections to clinical care, and other things that are, in fact, billable to Medicaid.
Councilman Reno Weber, I feel like this is becoming, just a pattern. So I can speak to that, and as a member of the department that has some experience with Medicaid, can talk about what we're doing there. So without getting into, I guess, too many technical weeds, we are on the cusp of establishing a new Medicaid number for behavioral health. That is something that does not exist in Metro currently. Our Medicaid numbers have been applied to public health, EMS. This will be behavioral health, where we can actually bill for case management, therapeutic services. So we are on the cusp of establishing that. As you know, that would help us, allow us to bill for community health workers, but something that we are very excited about, but I don't want to overpromise because it's something we're just learning about, is something called a 915I RISE waiver. So if you've heard of that, our understanding is that if we are able to become a provider for that waiver, which we would have to apply for, then that would allow us to bill for some housing services and the housing navigation services that we already provide. So it would apply to things we already do. So long story short, we are well on our way to that.
And I know that there's a quarterly report coming soon, so I look forward to seeing our numbers on that, and I appreciate your continued efforts in that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Piagentini. And then in the queue is Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm usually pretty critical, and I've been critical of homeless services in the past. I'm not going to be critical. As a matter of fact, I love what I'm seeing, really love it. If every department pulled reports like this to detail what they were doing, I mean, I agree with the sentiments of Councilman Hudson on efficiency on stuff, but we can even say that because we have a report that's showing us services and people served compared to money. I mean, I don't know of how many other departments are doing that effectively and that transparently. So really, I just want to start by saying how much I appreciate this level of transparency and this level of data collection on what's going on. It's tremendous. I've seen a completely seismic shift in how we're dealing with homelessness over the past 2 years particularly. And I just want to, for those that maybe weren't in the meeting or weren't here at the time, just to be clear about how different it is. One of the last arguments that I had before now Deputy Mayor, when she was on council, with the person who was running homeless service at the time, we literally had the head of homeless services putting a picture of a homeless citizen who was lying face down on the public sidewalk downtown, who was known mental illness and addiction issues, and because that person told somebody in homeless services at the time that they, quote, chose to live there, the direction was leave them on the street, which is complete and utter insanity. Ignoring the fact that it's illegal, there's absolutely nothing compassionate about that decision. And listening to a person's choice when that person is clinically mentally ill and addicted. They cannot make that decision in that state. So really appreciate everything you're doing, appreciate the new directions we're going in. Two quick questions, and then one more thing to think about. Just to be super clear, I know I'm with, I think, Chairman Kramer. My understanding of the assessment is that it was risk and priority, but I just want to be super clear. It is illegal to camp in public land, private land. That is illegal, correct?
Yes, with House Bill 5.
Right, it's illegal.
Correct.
And I think even before House Bill 5, it was probably without a permit illegal to camp right on public land.
Could not block a sidewalk.
Correct, okay. And then philosophically, okay, this is a more philosophical question. I have to imagine, but again, you can correct me, that it's, or help me answer this question. Is it more or less compassionate to allow people to live outside in homeless camps versus meeting with them and assigning them to services and getting them into shelter, getting them into housing? Which is more compassionate from the administration's point of view?
This is a very good philosophical question. So if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I would say our responsibility as a city and as an agency is to ensure connection and inspire readiness for change. So when someone is ready to do something different, that we have provided them with resources, we've provided them with the best that we can, a mechanism in which to inspire change. We also have an obligation to collective health and safety. And so when those things run up against each other, which is someone's readiness for change compared to negative impacts to collective health and safety, we are compelled to nudge them toward making a different choice that again ensures or mitigates risk. So does that answer your question?
Close enough. Because here's what I'll say, and look, I'll just say that there have been prior administrations that used the word compassion over and over and over again, and we saw record numbers of people living on the street and not connected to services. And when Mayor Greenberg was elected, one of the very first meeting I sat down with him post his inauguration, I said, if you don't have a strategy around homelessness, then this is all over. I mean, like, just kiss the city goodbye if we can't figure out how to do it. Not because there is an image issue, right? That is a problem, of course. But because it is not healthy for that individual to live in that environment, period, full stop, right? So, yes, of course, from a, business point of view or, tourism and all this, we don't want to convey that image. But I would argue more importantly, for that individual, it is bad news. And that, if that was the primary thing, we should want everybody off the streets and connected to services. And the last thing I'll say is related to the Medicaid number. The great news is there is a person who used to work for Metro government who might be the head of all of Medicaid in the state of Kentucky. So I'm hoping that we are reaching out to him and getting a meeting to help ensure, right, not that we should get special treatment, but that ensure that we're doing everything the right way and it's moving along as swiftly as possible. But yeah, I am sure he would be very interested in ensuring that we're getting that Medicaid number and being certified so that we can bill for these services as well. So thanks for bringing that up, but he can be a good resource. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Shamika Parrish-Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No.
I first want to say that I am thankful to hear the responses from my colleagues and the questions you all have asked and challenged, because these are things that are really important to people who will never be in our spaces. I want to reiterate that public safety is also not having these encampments exist at all. The sad thing is that a lot of the things that Homeless Services does is reactionary, that what they're doing is not preventing homelessness. They're dealing with a symptom of it and a symptom of poverty, and we're going to see a rise in these numbers. We're going to see it. Other cities are seeing it. We will continue to see it. But how we respond to it makes a difference on how people can transition out of homelessness into housing. Housing first is the only thing that solves our homeless crisis. In the meantime, we have shelters that do not end homelessness, but they provide a Band-Aid to the symptom that continues to grow. We have nonprofits that is doing most of this work. The work that is in this report all connects to nonprofits who are doing the bulk of getting people housed. And I don't hear them acknowledged enough, as far as like Arthur Street Hotel has helped house hundreds of people. Hope Village has helped house more than 100 people. And there's other groups and entities that are not connected and mentioned that are doing this work. What I've seen from I know the name has changed. I have to adjust to that. But what I've seen is aggressiveness in clearings. And we talk about a previous administration that in 12 years did encampment cleanings and clearings, because let's be clear, a cleaning and a clearing are two different things. A relocation is a different thing. You're not relocating them physically. You're cleaning it because you say you're mitigating harm, but you are not connecting all of them to the service. I've watched hours and hours of body cam footage where none of the people you woke up or that weren't blocking highways, that weren't blocking streets, that you actually connected them to services. I want to know what is the lesson learned from what happened to Samantha Crabtree that was pregnant and how she was addressed. And if you watch all of the footage that day from when she was addressed and before, none of them were connected to services. I've asked since our last budget cycle, for a breakdown of how much these things you call cleanings these clearings are costing? What is the breakdown amount of how much each one is costing? The machinery, the additional support from LMPD, the people that come in. I know that some of this stuff you've contracted out to other organizations, but I want to see a clear breakdown of how much each one of these encampment clearings cost versus what it costs to house or to temporarily shelter someone in a hotel or in another place. And with that said, my only other question was about the breakdown of the budget of what this is actually costing. What is the purpose of doing your own Rave Alert when the Rave Alert system we have already works? It works. It's connected. All of our organizations that do connected work are connected to that. So why are you starting something that is already working and has worked? And then you said that 89% of the participants, no deaths, I think that's great. The inclement weather and all of those things are great. But how are you diversifying the funding that you have? Because that's been a thing that's been mentioned. We throw a lot of money at a problem, but if we're not doing something different, we're just repeating it. So people who call 311 because they see a homeless encampment don't know that you're using that information to go and clear people out, but you're not necessarily relocating them to somewhere else. You're clearing them all out. And not everyone that is homeless and on the streets has a drug issue. Not everyone that's homeless and on the street has an issue of mental health. Some people simply do not have enough money to stay somewhere, and they actually need to be placed. And the last part I'll say is the hotel connections you're doing with some people is hit and miss. Not everybody that is unhoused when you do your clearings is connected to an option to go and stay in a hotel. Many would take that if that's the option, but we all know that hotel stays will not end the homelessness. It's just a temporary fix. That is hit and miss on who actually gets access to those hotel stays. It's a selective process. And I did a few shifts at the Room and Inn that was held by Up for Women, where they didn't get any funding from us as a city and helped hundreds of women night after night for the last few months without any funding to help that. It was all volunteer based. So I'm just saying we need to split this money up. Wayside has gotten millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I've stayed there twice, so there's no biasness in this because they've helped my family when we stayed there. But the thing is, Wayside won't end the homelessness, and a lot of these shelters are unregulated, and a lot of trauma is happening, and that is the reason why some people do not want to go into these shelters. So as we are a city and we can't pay to get everybody off the street, when we are using funding to help mitigate these issues, we need to be clear about how that funding is being spent. And I just would like a clear breakdown of how much these clearings cost, including your staff time, including Mr. Pilbeams, which I'm glad to see him dressed in a suit because he's dressed like a police officer when he's in these encampment clearings. I want to see what this costs and why is it so hard to get this information a year later?
If you'd
May I
like to
speak, Chair?
respond, Deputy Mayor.
Yes. Okay, Councilmember Pearson, I'm going to do my very best because I think there were several questions in there, so feel free to jump in if I'm not capturing this correctly. First of all, I want to say you mentioned several important nonprofits that are doing good work in our community. The report that we have shared today is a reflection of those that were funded with our homeless initiative funds. So it's not an attempt to negate another nonprofit. There are lots of nonprofits doing good work. My understanding was the charge of the council was to produce a report based on what we're investing in. And so that's what that reflects, and that's what that's an attempt of. Second thing I would say is it is a disservice to sum up the experience of our homeless service division around strictly talking about camp relocations. And we can debate about the semantics of that, but I will say we have very hardworking folks who work in homeless services division who spend their day reaching, connecting with folks, providing service referrals, essentially doing light case management, getting people IDs, taking them to doctor's appointments, getting them into shelter. And so I deeply regret not hearing recognition of their work in that. The third thing I would say is we would love to have more options and fully recognize that shelter is is a temporary fix for the long-term housing needs that our community has. We're on the same page there. We would certainly love to see more options, and we'll always say that we need more resources in our community, and there are a variety of housing types that are certainly needed to accommodate. I think you asked the question of what has been learned. I would say from my perspective, what has been learned is that we have an obligation to provide connection to, again, inspire readiness for change, provide the resources that we do have that exist, and support a model that is high support, high accountability, ensuring that we're also keeping in mind collective health and safety, and who shoulders the burden of not being able to access the TARC stop? Who shoulders the burden of not being able to access or use their pocket park or walk their dog or walk their child to school? So I would say as part of our learning experience, it really is how can we enhance those supports and how can we be as consistent as possible in following up and doing what we say we're going to do and be accountable. Last but not least, in terms of budget and staff time, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know Aaron has produced so many good reports, we did factor in the overall costs of general fund use to Homeless Services Division. So if that was not part of the packet that you got, we can certainly prepare that. So you should be looking at or should have access to a chart that shares the total general fund dollar amount that goes in to support Homeless Services Division. So yes, that is certainly John's salary and his encampment response team, but it is also our homeless outreach staff. And so those costs are available across the continuum. We don't keep the costs for what LMPD's response, but could certainly get that around what we're spending in officers based on what areas of the community. Same thing would be said with solid waste. We could factor in costs of what we're spending. I would just say, though, we have an obligation to clean our city streets. And my time in community tells me there's very little disagreement about the need to clean streets and expend those costs. Council has been very generous with us around ensuring cleanliness and health in our community, and would hope to see that continue. Thank you. Oh, and Josh will talk about rave alerts. I hope I captured it.
Josh.
So just to speak to the rave alert, we know that the coalition really does a wonderful job. I'm registered, I think we all are, with Rave Alert. We receive the alerts every day. 1 o'clock, the shelter bed availability notification. They also use that for White Flag. That is not going to stop because that is something that they do well. We definitely aren't reinventing the wheel. Actually, this is a partnership with the coalition, with Director Harris and others at the coalition. We've already engaged in some discussion of what our agreement's going to look like. The system that we're going to use, which is actually already part of what we use for Lens alerts here at Louisville Metro, so it's just a continuum of what we already use, will be just a way to communicate information from Louisville Metro. So, and that's not necessarily just related to homeless services. It may also be regarding inclement weather or service opportunities, events that could be helpful to the community. And honestly, it's at a very, very low cost. So it's kind of a low cost, high reward situation. And so we just took the opportunity to go ahead and initiate that. And that should be up and running within the next month. But I do want to be clear that it is a partnership with the coalition. We are definitely not competing with them. And that's been our basically our stipulation from the beginning as we've worked with the coalition, that we don't want to overlap. We're gonna make sure that we're compatible in sharing different information that works together.
Thank you. May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll be quick. And thank you for that, and thank you for breaking that down. If it's an expansion that includes, as the encampment clearings are happening mostly downtown in some of our districts that are located in the central part of the city, we see more people being dispersed and moved out to other parts of the county. So if this issue isn't affecting every district, it will as it continues to grow. People are going to go wherever they can go, and we're going to see more people out. So if the expansion or your connection with the Rave Alert is to help lift that up and connect it across the county, I think that is a good thing. I'm also on the board of the Coalition for the Homeless as one of the only people on that board who's actually been homeless and navigated our systems. So for me, my value added is that I want to help support what works. And I want to make sure that I state, as I've always said, and I know that this administration struggles with, I can support something and not and still have issues with how some things are carried out. My comments are not against anybody that does any homeless outreach services. Those are very vital and they're very important. But I also have a lens of being on the ground and seeing how those things are played out and what happens next. So I have to respect your expertise, and you also should respect my expertise in seeing how these things are play out. There's parts of this where I've been talking to business owners who told me they've been pressured by the city, even if they made arrangements with people who are unhoused, to do something with it as a visibility issue. And I am a transplant to Louisville, but since I've been here since I moved here in 2002, every time it comes around Derby, we saw more of aggressive clearings and cleanings of that. But with this administration, in this first year and a half, or almost 2 years now, we've seen more clearings in the whole 12 years of the previous administration, but not the same levels of backup support and things like that. I'm not saying one administration is better than the other. I'm saying that what the people are dealing with, and with the rate that homelessness is growing, we're just spinning our wheels and playing marbles with people, moving them around. But if we have nowhere for them to go, there's less 24-hour access places. You can go to White Castles, or, you saw what happened at the Greyhound station. There's not places for people to go, so people are going to go wherever they think they can go. And if we don't have a real plan, then how long are we going to spend this money? And the only reason, Deputy Mayor George, I keep asking you about a breakdown of the exact cost is because when this came up, when we were all on a joint call, and the Courier Journal had quoted that each encampment clearing was $8,000, you told me that wasn't accurate number, and that wasn't true. So I've been asking before I was on council, and now that I'm on council, what is the cost of each encampment clearing? Because I see a bunch of machinery, I see vans of people coming, I see all of these things coming. What are we spending to clear it, or clean it, as you say? Because there used to be a time where we actually cleaned the encampments and people moved back, and you all have just acknowledged that that's illegal now based on what House Bill 5 state. But House Bill 5 also has a caveat that cities and community and municipalities can create their own place for people who are unhoused to be. And you're not doing it on that end. You're working through the organizations that are continuing to do this work. So the burden for those organizations continue to grow, but the support for those organizations continues to be pulled back. That is why I'm asking about those costs, to see how we can help the organizations that are alleviating this issue every day without your help or not. But if we can take that money and it could be better spent and getting people into more temporary options that lead to the transition to permanent placement, then to me that makes sense. We know the problem. We have the data. We know that this problem continues to grow. And so if those partnerships are working well, then we should see people being housed and we recidivate in all the things at once. That's why I'm asking for a complete breakdown of that cost. I didn't see that in this report. And that's what I would like, line by line. What does it cost to have people? Because now they're out every day. It used to be a few times a week that you all were doing these encampment clearings. And now you're doing them daily. So I want to know, what is this costing daily to do this? And then if we're clearing KYTC, I saw that on the list. If we're clearing under these overpasses, under the overpasses and all of that, what is the state giving to this? Because the state passed this legislation. We're enacting it, but we're also paying the cost. So, and we have a loose memorandum with the state. But what is happening? How are they contributing to pay for some of these costs? They're not, as I can see it. So if they're not paying for it and we're paying to clear their property, where is the return to our community on the investment that you all have been allotted to do? That is what this is about. We meet regularly on other spaces, but in this space, I just want a breakdown of that cost. If you can share that with me through email, that would be helpful. And if you can tell me how I can help connect other nonprofits that are doing this meaningful work to you all so they can participate in potential funding, I would like to do that as well.
Do you need to respond?
I can respond very briefly to say a couple things. One, I just want to be very clear. We do not make decisions to relocate encampments based on any event that happens in our city, and that includes Derby. We take this seriously every day for the neighbors who are currently here. I would be disappointed to hear that a business is being told that they need to make different decisions based on visibility, and I would encourage those businesses to reach out to me. With that being said, we do have zoning laws, and we also, for businesses who reach out because they have concerns, we do talk to them about the importance of consistent practices, and so I do hope those conversations are happening. In terms of KYTC paying costs, KYTC, we have a maintenance agreement, so there's certain, we do get dollars to support general maintenance of KYTC space and public rights of way. I will also just say that for a neighbor who lives near KYTC property, doesn't really matter to them who's paying the city what. They're the ones living with the burden of perhaps living next to an open-air drug market. And so because of all the other environmental concern issues that exist living next to an interstate, we take that very seriously and feel compelled to respond. In terms of connecting other nonprofits, we do the best we can to, I think, get information out when Homeless Initiative funds are available. We wait until the budget is passed because, of course, we're dependent on that partnership with our council to be able to fund. But once we know we have the funding available, we do work with our partners, and we can certainly do more. And if you have ideas for ways that we could reach more nonprofits, we're happy to do that. I know Director Williams is already looking to schedule a meeting with our partners and those we have that have previously, I guess, received EAF funding, any sort of funding from Homeless Services Division, as well as share publicly through communication mechanisms. Last but not least, I would just say in terms of cost, we are happy to provide, Homeless Services Division is certainly not tracking, for instance, other agencies' budgets, but we can certainly share those agencies' budgets. I would say that when you hear reference to previous inflated costs around encampment relocations, that is a result of encampments growing very large. When you have less risk and, quite frankly, just less stuff, it is obviously quicker and more cost-efficient to manage in the day-to-day. And as you can see from John's numbers that should have been included in the packet, our encampments are smaller, and so as a result, they are more efficient to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Mayor George, I'm so sorry. At least you're getting some exercise, and let's look on the positive side of this. A couple quick, hopefully yes or no questions. It's illegal to kill somebody, correct? To commit murder?
Yes.
That was a state law that was passed that makes murder illegal, correct?
I wouldn't be able to answer that fully, but to follow where I think you're going, yes.
You're pretty sure? Okay.
Yes.
Are you aware that they give us any money to enact the law, to enforce the law that it is illegal to kill somebody?
I wouldn't be able to speak to what we get from the state related with law enforcement.
But in your experience on council and in the executive office, you would say it's common that the state passes laws that then we have to, that every
Yes.
jurisdiction the state has to enforce, and they don't give us money to enforce it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hudson.
Thank you. I don't want my questions to be interpreted as criticism of your work. I really appreciate the work that you do. You do great work. You're saving lives, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. And I just wouldn't want my questions to be interpreted that way, so I just want to clarify for that. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else in the queue. Seeing no one else in the queue, let me offer a special thank you for bringing forward the report today. We appreciate the information and look forward to any follow-up information that may be coming. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 2. It is an ordinance 7225, an ordinance amending ordinance 100, series 2024, relating to the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating budget by transferring $26,000 from the Neighborhood Development Fund, District 2, to the Louisville Metro Council General Operations for District 2.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I note that Councilwoman Shanklin is joining us online. Is Caleb? Okay, Caleb Howard is also joining us online, and I believe Caleb is going to speak to this. So, Caleb, if you don't mind, we would need your. There you go, camera on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Yes, I will try to speak to this. Ms. Shanklin is online as well, so hopefully she can add to it a little bit. Theoretically, this should be relatively easy. It's just moving 26,000 to our general operating fund, mostly to help fund our Newburgh Day event and help with basically a consultant. Help pay for her, help pay for food, help pay for that kind of stuff. I believe, Ms. Shanklin, this is half of what each council got. I'm not sure exactly what it was called, but an allotment of money each council got. We put half into our NDF, and now we're trying to move that half from our NDF to our general operating fund. I think that's what's going on.
Well, what's going on is when we all got $53,000 from the leftovers from the budget, I'm losing my papers. I decided I wanted to put half in my NDF, half in my office money. And the reason I'm putting that money there is because a lot of times it take, like Love It, all of those type things. I can take that out of the office money as a contractor, and it's a lot easier if I go on the website and find a contractor and get different things done. Also, I brought the kids. I lost my place, Caleb. So I brought the kids down to visit, and of course we feed them. I also brought the senior citizens over to the courthouse, and we feed them also. So I put money aside because after talking to Judge Green, this summer we're going to bring more kids down because it's an opportunity for them to see what's going on as far as if they get in trouble, and some of the other people that are already down there and they watch the court procedures. So that was the reason I moved the money over. And then with the contractor, one of them with Newburgh Day, last year we did not have rides or anything. That they were gone. They quit doing the rides, and we've had rides for 27 years. And so we got a contractor to help us get those rides back in the community. So that's why I split my money so I can use it that way, bring more kids in for the summer. I have a part-time permanent person that comes to my office also. So that's where the money's going.
Any questions?
That was a far better explanation than mine, Ms. Shanklin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, this is an ordinance that calls for a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, if you please open the voting.
Councilmember Parrish Wright,
Yes.
Councilmember McCraney,
Yes.
I don't think I have one. Okay. I don't think he's on there. He's not showing us. Mr. Chair, you have 9 yes votes.
Right. Councilman Shanklin.
I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate you guys voting for that. So just want to say thanks.
All right, quite welcome. That is a unanimous vote, and therefore we'll go to the consent calendar. That was the last item on the agenda, and so without objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you.